Liddon Hill in Kent is the home of British Rallycross, so what better place to start the Monster Energy British Championship? Now, Rallycross is a unique kind of racing on a mixture of surfaces from tarmac to loose, meaning this is the wild child of British racing.
So with over 40 years of Rallycross action at Liddon Hill, we're going to look at the Retro Rallycross featuring historic motors from yesteryears. The first heats got underway. Rob Gibson led the pack into the first corner after an impressive start, but Lance Foster in his Leyland Mini was the first casualty. Grzegorz Kalinecki suffered problems in his Integrale and was forced into retirement early. But up at the front, a fierce battle developed between Ray Morgan in his Escort and Gibson at the wheel of the 6R4. And even through the harsh weather conditions, this battle continued. Through the mist and spray, though, came the recovering Lance Foster. Right at the end of the heat, a fantastic manoeuvre saw him get to the checkered flag first. The weather improved slightly for the second heats, but when the lights went out, the problems continued for Grzegorz Kalinecki. He was left sitting on the start line as the rest of the cars thundered around the first corner. Barry Stewart was to suffer problems in his stunning Porsche 911 and would end the heat as a spectator. Meanwhile, Grzegorz Kalinecki managed to get the Lancia fired up and started to make some progress until a moment at the top of the hill saw him lose control and spin out. And this time it was Ray Morgan who scrambled through to the finish line first, just ahead of the Mini of Lance Foster. In the third heat, history seemed to repeat itself as Kalinecki was left once again on the start line. The weather had improved, but the drivers were still struggling to keep these beasts tame. Rob Gibson, in particular, seemed to be struggling in these very tricky conditions. It wasn't long, though, before the drama started. Barry Stewart lost control of the 911, and Rob Gibson was forced to take avoiding action. Undeterred by this, though, Gibson managed to get his head down and get to the line ahead of the rest of the pack. And so, with a win and 2 seconds in the heats, it's Ray Morgan who lines up on pole position for the A final. Lance Foster sits in second spot in his Mini, and in third is the iconic Rallycross car of the 80s, the 6R4. So Lance Foster in the very distinctive green and white, literally green and white, Mini, alongside that car of Rob Gibson. Remember that car back in the day in the hands of guys like Will Gollop. The car was designed by Patrick Head, with Williams Formula One fame, of course, back in the day. So let's see, though, what Rob Gibson can do with that machine today. You can see the Lance Foster Mini alongside him. So it's Morgan, Foster and Gibson on the front row. Stewart, Biaggi. And then at the back of the grid, you've got Kalinecki and Mark Griffin in the Fiesta, but a brilliant start from Barry Stewart in the Porsche, using all of the traction of the 911 to get down the inside of Lance Foster's Mini. But Ray Morgan, the pole man, gets the best of the starts, uses his pole position well, and Foster and Stewart make contact. And around goes Barry Stewart, frustration. He sits there patiently waiting for the pack to go through. Meanwhile, the battles continue. Kalinecki getting around the outside of Biaggi. Griffin in the mix as well, and look at Rob Gibson really struggling on that first lap. So let's take another look at that first corner incident between Stewart and Foster. Initially it looks like maybe Stewart just gets into the back of Morgan. I don't think that was the case, but here as Foster cuts back, as Stewart gets sideways at the same point, 2 into 1 won't go. He's very lucky not to be collected by the rest of that angry pack coming through. Meanwhile, this battle at the front is very, very furious between Morgan and Foster. Foster taking the long route round the outside of the hairpin. And is there a bit of contact there? Well, certainly there's definitely some contact there. Round goes Foster. Morgan checks up. Look at Kalinecki coming round the outside now. Was that an overtake under yellow flags? Well, to be fair to him, I don't think he really had an awful lot of choice other than to perhaps stop altogether, which was never going to happen. Lance Foster, the man from the northeast of England. It's a big old drive down here to Lydden Hill. It's about as far as you could get, really, in terms of racetracks. Problem for Morgan. Well, this man was victorious in one of the events last year. Not going to be his day today, the pole man out of it. And that's Kalinecki with a problem. That means that Lance Foster, despite the spin that we've just seen, looks like he's going to be leading the race. Real frustration for Grzegorz Kalinecki, another man who took victory in one of the events last year. And certainly that Integrale is quick enough, but obviously not his day now. Let's have another look at what happened between Morgan and Foster earlier on. Look at this, side by side, sideways from Foster, sideways from Morgan. They get into each other. And look at that for a recovery. It's like the Italian job. What a brilliant piece of driving by Lance Foster. Gets himself back into action. Kalinecki, obviously his lead was to be short-lived with that technical problem here. You can see Kalinecki going into the right-hander at the first corner. And as he comes out, the car just appears to just lose power altogether. Looks maybe like something like an electrical problem or a drive issue, who knows. But Foster does well to avoid the back of the Lancia, to be fair. Meanwhile, Lance Foster now pushing very, very hard, and pushing even harder, arguably, is Rob Gibson after that very difficult first lap. A man who has been synonymous with the 6R4 over its years of competition, loving this championship. His wife is very much heavily involved, as Rob is, in promoting this series. Now, it is a series rather than a championship. In other words, all the races are standalone. It's not about championship points, it's about the glory of each individual event. And at the moment, it's this lovely little green and white Mini. Lance Foster looking so calm and controlled at the head of the pack, but he's under pressure. Kalinecki steps away from the car, based in Ireland, even though a very non-Irish name for Grzegorz Kalinecki. And there is the 6R4 closing down on Foster. That extra power surely counting for Gibson. That and some very skillful driving. Look at how hard he is on the brakes there, just carrying so much speed into the hairpin. And this is going to be very, very tight towards the end of this race. Lance Foster doing a brilliant defensive job there, gets across to the inside and blocks Gibson. He's going to hold the inside line. You can see that Mini bouncing around through the final section of the lap. Is he going to be able to do enough to keep Rob Gibson behind him? We'll find out very, very soon. It's going to be an absolute fierce battle to the end. Couldn't get two more diverse cars if you tried. Both got great heritage in the sport. Malcolm Wilson rallying this car back in the day, the 6R4 that is. Interesting to see that Foster seemed to get really good drive out of the right-hander there as you go into the left-hander at the devil's elbow. This is where Gibson looked very strong, using all of the power up the hill. Is he going to get momentum? Now look at that, Foster defending once again, as he's got every right to do as the race leader. Well, the man from Tyne Weir has got a long drive back home, but is he going to be able to take a winner's trophy with him? Or will it be second place? Or is it going to be something else? Gibson trying the long way round. That's going to be a very, very difficult move to pull off. And it looks like Foster is going to have done enough, or is he? Side by side through the last corner, going through the chicane as they cross the line. It is Lance Foster who wins. Fantastic performance from the Mini driver. As we see Mark Griffin bringing the Haynes of Maidstone Ford Fiesta into the last couple of corners. He's driven a solid race, but the star of the show has been this man, Lance Foster. What a performance by him. An absolutely outstanding drive. Despite the spin, he manages to take victory. And frustration for Kalinecki, still forlornly looking at that car. Hopefully he'll be back out fighting next time we see these guys in action. So that's what it was. Foster by just 0.79 of a second ahead of Gibson, Ian Biaggi. And then unfortunately Kalinecki, Stewart and Morgan not finishing this event.
That has to be one of the most fun races I think I've ever watched. What was it like to drive it?
I think it was one of the most fun races I've ever been in my entire life. Yeah. A full 360 down the hill and come back with it in first place. I'm shocked, yeah.
That was showboating.
Yeah, probably. I like to entertain the crowd a bit, shall we say.
Talk me through it. What was going through your mind? Because you probably didn't hear this, but you got a full round of applause all the way around the track.
I was quite surprised. I came back in, the amount of people who were clapping at us, but when the car went sideways, I don't know, I put it back in the first gear, and as soon as it started pointing the right way again, just accelerated and it pulled itself square, and sort of hammer down, head down, off it went.
And never mind that moment, it was one of the most incredible pieces of defensive driving I've seen at the end there. You just wouldn't let him through.
No, it's 6 or 4. I always wanted one as a child. And I've just
Didn't you chuck it down into first gear?
Yes, at one point I did, yeah, just to slow him down a bit, trying to block him for the corner. But no, excellent, really pleased.
There was just no way through, was there?
No way through, and the track's that slippy and slimy. And I heard the Mini was going backwards down the hill at one time, which I missed. But I was watching what he was doing. He was all over the place, and so we've got to be careful.
Have you ever been in a race like that before?
Well, many a way. Right, yes, definitely, yeah. But it was very slippy and very greasy now. So you've got to be careful.
That's just British Rallycross at its best, isn't it?
It could be, yeah, it could be. Yeah. But I got filled in on the first corner, so I couldn't really see what was happening. But that's how the job goes.
One class providing big grids at Knockhill is the Retro Rallycross. Started only last year, the series is going from strength to strength.
We started with a grid of 5 cars, and today for Knockhill we have 11.
You're attracting some variety of cars as well.
Yes, we are, and for the first time we've got both classes have got grids, the pre-82 and the 82-87, and with the 14 cars that we're scheduled to have for Mallory Park, that should look even better in the bigger class as well. This weekend we have the 2 Black brothers, Jim and Dave. They're joining us for the first time. And of course we have Mark Williams, who is one of the newest members of the Retro Rallycross Challenge, and he flies in from America to take part. And so that's quite exciting, you know. That just shows you how big Retro Rallycross can be.
I've been a Rallycross fan all my life and a big John Taylor fan, so I grew up watching the car that I now drive. So I built it as a replica of the first ever championship winner from 1973, and the Retro Series just brings a lot of really great cars together, and it was too good to resist.
And how are you finding it at Knockhill?
Well, first time at Knockhill, I think the weather was predictable, but a great track. Escort loves it, not maybe enough power up the straight, but a really great track to drive.
A great track had difficult conditions, and it was the pre-82 cars in action first of all. Lance Foster in the little green and white Mini, and a very, very sideways Ray Morgan in the Escort, taking up part of the Knockhill cones with him underneath the car. They bounce their way through the infield. Mark Williams in that beautifully built Haynes of Maidstone Ford Escort, as we heard from Mark, a replica of the car that John Taylor used to win the first ever championship back in the day. Lance Foster, though, looked totally in control. The man from the northeast of England, really revelling in these conditions, and Mark Williams having a great time out there, brought his Escort home in 5th. On to Heat 2, and Ray Morgan and Lance Foster side by side as they braked into turn 1. Is it going to be the Mini or the Escort? Well, brilliant little bit of overtaking by Foster, just gets himself ahead. And he really did look like a man on a mission throughout the day. So Foster was on a mission to try and get 3 out of 3. Meanwhile, Ray Morgan had the best of the start. And once again, Foster very aggressive. This time, some contact between the Mini and the Escort. Ray Morgan had to struggle to try and get the car back into the race. Immediately behind the Mini was a lovely Fiesta, another Haynes of Maidstone car, this time of Mark Griffin. Mark Williams also really getting stuck in and getting ahead of Ian Biaggi. Morgan, though, recovered, but had an awful lot of work to do to try and get himself back in the mix with the rest of the pack. It was that man, Lance Foster, who just took it all in his stride and made it a perfect 3 out of 3. Morgan, though, brought it home and was able to bag some points for 5th position. So with a perfect score of 3 wins out of 3 in the heats, Lance Foster takes his position at the front of the grid. And a shake of the head from Ray Morgan. That's what he thinks of the conditions, I think. I think he also had a bit of a tough time of it in that final heat. Off the line, though. It's going to be a battle between Foster, Morgan and Mark Griffin as the gloom descends at Knockhill. See how evenly matched these cars are. And once again, Foster using the nimbleness of the Mini just to edge ahead. Morgan going in very deep, getting on the slippery stuff on the exit there on the curb. And straight away, Foster is in the groove, starting to get his head down. And Morgan, meanwhile, getting right out onto the loose. The extra deep gravel on the exit there, and look how much that costs him in terms of traction. It allows Mark Griffin in the Fiesta to get ahead. Meanwhile, Biaggi and Williams a little bit further back, having a great scrap as well. And look at Biaggi, absolutely on a mission. I think he may have got a bit of momentum, and Mark Griffin and maybe got ahead. Morgan just looks like he's struggling a little bit for traction. Mark Williams has got that immaculate Mark 1 Escort. A little bit grubby already, as you'd expect. Starting to get a little bit spaced out. Morgan really having to fight very, very hard with the Escort. And that shake of the head maybe was a bit of a precursor of doom from his point of view. It just doesn't look like it's going the way he would have liked. Saw him win the opening event of this series last year, and we saw them at Mallory Park for the first time. Of course, as we heard from Shirley Gibson, it's going from strength to strength. There's some brilliant cars that we're hoping to see in action very, very soon. But for Mark Griffin, a little bit too leery. Just loses the back end and then bouncing into the bank. Over he goes. He's okay, that's the most important thing. Struggling, I think, maybe to get the car started. He got it going again. Understandably, perhaps everything's all been shaken about a bit in terms of maybe the fuels and the electric system. Look at the lead that Lance Foster has got. He's absolutely reveling in these conditions. Has just been absolutely in charge throughout the meeting so far. Biaggi in the other of the minis doing a very, very good job. Worked his way through up into second place very early on and has just edged away a little bit. There's absolutely nothing anybody can do about this man. Had an absolute scrap at Liddon with Morgan, and there was a bit of contact, and it was a spin to a win for Foster, but red flags bringing that final to an end a little bit earlier than we expected. Hard-working marshals having to work extra hard to get Mark Griffin's car. You can see just a bit of understeer, bit of oversteer, bit more understeer, and over and out. Well, let's hope. It just looked like he's picked up too much damage to the car itself. But obviously not able to restart, which is frustration for Griffin, who was looking very, very good in the final. So, Lance Foster has got the job done. Has been an absolute star here at Knockhill. That car has looked so hooked up, and he has been really getting the most out of it. So for the pre-82 final, it's Lance Foster who wins from Ian Biaggi. So it's all minis at the front, and Ray Morgan, Mark Williams, and of course Mark Griffin not finishing. And what happened last time out at Knockhill? Well, Lance Foster looked okay with the conditions. Ray Morgan clearly didn't. A shake of the head telling us what he thought of the racing prospect. Didn't stop him having a really good go. Meanwhile, Mark Griffin had a fairly spectacular end to his day. Over and out. Fortunately, not too much damage to the car and no damage to the driver. Meanwhile, Lance Foster just about managed to get through the murk and through the gloom. He was okay in his category. Likewise, Rob Gibson just about headed off. Gregor's Kalanecki, you can see the drama that he was having in trying to get the car stopped and turned in his Lancia Delta Integrale. Rob Gibson in the wonderfully spectacular Metro 6R4 was to get the job done and win in Scotland.
Now this year marks the 1-year anniversary of the birth of Retro Rallycross, and we've already talked about the championship going from strength to strength, and they are back with 2 classes. Now what we're bound to see is some amazing racing with some stunning classic machinery. Let's find out what happened in the heats.
So some beautiful cars to watch in action at Mallory Park, and as has been the case quite often this year, Lance Foster got himself to the front of the pack very, very quickly. The beautiful Anglia of Mark Thomas in the mix this time. With Ray Morgan just ahead of Thomas. But up at the front, it was the distinctive green and white Mini of Lance Foster who was to take the heat win ahead of Morgan and Dave Black. Heat 2, Dave Black at the front of the pack. Foster getting edged wide by his brother Jim. And then up ahead, a little bit of contact between Kalanecki and Dave Black, and he sailed off towards the tyre wall, fortunately stopping just short. Meanwhile, Foster running very, very wide, and Kalanecki spinning the car. Ray Morgan, who was successful here last year, bounces through the gravel, just ahead of the fight between Jim Black and Mark Griffin, and a very, very smoky Jim Black, giving us a bit of a hint of what was to come, and that was retirement for Jim and frustration for him and his Astra. Ray Morgan, though, kept it all together right until the end, and then almost lost it all, bouncing very close to the barrier. E3, though, Lance Foster, Ray Morgan and Grzegorz Kalinecki continued their battle. Morgan had Foster, who had a brilliant scrap at the opening round of the season at Linden Hill. Look how spectacular they are. Look at what Kalinecki was doing. He gets so sideways, back across the other side of the track, somehow manages to keep the Lancia out of the barrier, keeping out of trouble. This time, as he crossed the line, was Ray Morgan, but Lance Foster wasn't giving up till the very end. So, with 2 wins in the heats, it's Ray Morgan in his Escort on pole position ahead of the Mini of Lance Foster and then the Astra of Dave Black. Biaggi and Kalinecki just a little bit further back. Look at the traction from the Lancia off the line. The four-wheel drive system working well as Ray Morgan takes the alternative route through the first corner, loses momentum, and it allows Lance Foster to get a little bit further ahead. Down through the gears. Well, we saw contact earlier on in the heats through there. Looks like there's a little bit of a damage on the back of Foster's car, maybe indicative of some contact already. Yeah, they're fighting for traction. They bounce across this incredibly bumpy and dusty section of the circuit. Look how Foster goes. Has he managed to hang on to it? Yes, somehow. What great control from the man from the northeast. I think perhaps that damage at the back causing him some tyre overheating issues, to say the least. Hopefully he'll be able to hang on in there to the end. Really causing all kinds of dramas for Lance Foster. Now let's have a look at what happened from Ray Morgan's car, the pole man. Not getting quite as good a getaway as he would have liked, but as he goes up through the gears, gets momentum, but there's nowhere to go other than on the grass. Foster is fighting with oversteer. Kalinecki's got momentum, that four-wheel drive Lancia giving him a bit of an advantage. Now, is there contact between Kalinecki and the back of Foster's car? Well, the evidence seems to be giving us that idea here from this angle. Yep, there definitely is some contact. And the damage was to put Foster out, meaning it's Kalinecki who leads at Mallory Park. Welcome back to Mallory Park, and we're watching the Retro Rallycross, and it's this beautiful Lancia Delta in Cagrali whistling its way around the Leicestershire circuit in the hands of Polish driver Grzegorz Kalinecki. Bit of contact early on between him and Lance Foster meant that unfortunately Foster retiring from the race, but looking very, very controlled at the front and leading the 82 to 87 category. Meanwhile, Mark Griffin, spectacular as ever in his Fiesta, getting nice and sideways out of the chicane there, trying to put some pressure on Ian Biaggi's Mini. Biaggi nice and tidy through the chicane that leads us to the end of the lap. Trying to keep the car straight as they bounce through the gravel. Looks like this one's going to run right to the flag. Good momentum from the Fiesta. Is he going to be able to get to the inside as they go into turn one? No. Griffin has to tuck back inside the little Mini. Kalinecki, meanwhile, having to do all he can to try and edge away from Morgan, who, as always, is charging very, very hard. Just listening to that very distinctive engine note, but it's all about Kalinecki. Takes victory at Mallory Park. Morgan nearly does it again and puts himself very close to the barrier. Takes second place and with it wins the pre-82 category for the Retro Rallycross. And this fight continues all the way to the end between Biaggi and between Mark Griffin. Griffin hanging on in there, trying to go the long way round. It's not over yet between these two. Biaggi's going to just, I think, be able to hang on and take second place in class, just ahead of a delighted Mark Griffin. I think he's going to be very pleased with that. And takes his podium here in his category, in his Fiesta. So that's confirmation of the A final result. Kalinecki wins by 2.16 seconds ahead of Ray Morgan in his Escort. Then Dave Black, great performance by him ahead of Ian Biaggi, Mark Griffin and Paul Smith in sixth in his Polo.
Carrying on where you left off in 2012, aren't you?
Yeah, we went last year, and this is the first race what we win this year. was lots of technical problem with the car. Today going very well, and on the end we win the final. Yeah. Whole day was some problems. First heat we can drive because some electrical problem, then we have the problem with the clutch, and financially we just can finish without any problem.
Yeah, there's loads to see for the fans here. One of the things they love seeing is the Retro Rallycross cars, these legendary machines. And the first of the heats saw Grzegorz Kalanecki have a bit of a drama with his Lancia Integrale, and Rob Gibson's distinctive Metro 6R4 took the win. Problems for Ray Morgan in his Escort saw him out of his first heat early on, but a win for Lance Foster headed home James Harrold's Beetle. The first part of Heat 2 saw a great battle between Barry Stewart and Rob Gibson, but Stewart unfortunately met the wall. Problems for Kalanecki's Integrale before the heat had even started, but a great battle went on between the beautiful Escort of Tommy Graham. An absolutely superb win for him in Heat 2. So as Kalanecki drives off the grid for Heat 3, problems for him, but fabulous battle between Barry Stewart and Tommy Graham until this incredibly spectacular accident, putting him out. Most importantly, he was okay, even if the car wasn't.
Well, it looked to me like you just wanted to see what the new car was made of.
Yeah, I was having a great race with Barry, and I just wanted to win. And the only way by him was to fly over him. So no, I just went for a gap and hit the rumble strip and just hold on tight.
I mean, it gave us all one of those moments, but for you, what was going through your mind? Were you just thinking, here we go again, or how's the car?
I thought it was never going to stop rolling, and it changed direction, and I could just feel the whole thing going, frightening sensation. And then when it stopped rolling, I was lying there, and all I was afraid of was, will it go on fire, you know? But it was just, it just happened so quickly, yeah. And then it went on forever, you know.
Absolutely. I mean, we had the green light early doors that you were fine, but at what point did you kind of do that mental check through? Am I nothing broken? Everything?
Well, I released the belts and I was sitting on the driver's door, and I knew everything was moving, and I had no real pain, but I just got dizzy then for a second, you know, and I just wanted out of there, you know.
Yeah. But you're fine now. That's the key thing.
Yeah, I'm grand now. We'll see, can we get the car ready for the final round in Croft and see how it goes.
Well, let's hope we see him back out again. Meanwhile, the B final for the Retro Rallycross saw Mark Thomas in his Anglia on the front row there, in Biaggi in the middle, Paul Smith on the right in his Polo, charging down towards the first corner, but problems already at the start for Grzegorz Kalanecki. The Lancia Integrale not wanting to play ball today, but he seems to be getting going. He was able to get away. Meanwhile, the battle between Biaggi and Thomas at the front looked pretty fierce. Paul Smith and Jim Black in his Astra also in the mix. But look at Kalanecki already charging up on the pack. Clearly the car working well. He's already passed Ian Biaggi and charging down on Mark Thomas, sweeping past him up the hill into the lead, and it was to be victory for Kalanecki, which was to put him on the back of the A final. So, on the front of the grid, it's Rob Gibson's MG Metro 6R4, the two minis of Russell Crampton and Lance Foster join him on the front row. They charge away into the final. Great start by Foster, the man who won the opening round here at Linden Hill back in April. Meanwhile, it is Rob Gibson in the very distinctive 6R4, car that was rallied with such success by drivers like Tony Pond and Malcolm Wilson, designed of course by Patrick Head of Williams F1 fame. What a wonderful, glorious mixture of cars. We got the Porsche of Stewart, the two minis getting well and truly stuck in. Foster, the man from the northeast, getting well and truly sideways. He had a fabulous battle with Ray Morgan in his Escort in this opening round. Kalanecki, meanwhile, the man who only qualified for the A final after coming from a car that was stationary at the start of the B final, charged his way through. He's already had a win at Mallory. He's trying to go for another one here at Linden Hill in the sunshine. Meanwhile, Barry Stewart not fazed by that incident with Tommy earlier on in the heats as Foster gets across the grass, green and white and tarmac and dirt and everything for the little Mini. Let's have another look at that, see what happens. He just gets a little bit out of shape and then very airborne. Nothing as spectacular though as Tommy Graham's off that we saw earlier on. Action continues. Stewart in his Porsche. Off Nilsson, of course, rallycrossing a car very similar to this one. Little bit of contact, a lot of contact in fact. Stewart goes up in the air and over the top of the Mini. Is Foster going to be able to recover? Let's have another look at that. He jinks one way, jinks the other way. And then as he gets on the brakes, just can't quite stop the car. There's a little bit of contact. The rear-wheel drive Porsche driving itself over the front of the Mini. Rob Gibson, meanwhile, continues imperiously on his way, looking very calm and collected. And Gibson it is who takes victory ahead of a charging Kalinecki. So the results look like this. It is Rob Gibson who wins ahead of Kalinecki, with Ray Morgan in third, ahead of Russell Crampton, Barry Stewart and Mark Griffin in sixth.
Overall, we've been blessed with the weather. The mayhem has been apparent, but the racing here is always great, isn't it?
Yeah, really good, especially on a nice day like this. The track's terrific, and the dust was nice that time. You just dampened it, and yeah, great, no problem.
It's a very muted celebration from you.
Well, yes, but you get used to these wins, don't you?
I don't. I've never won a race.
Right. I'll show you how it's done someday then.
Well, today, alongside the Grand Prix event, we have a number of support categories, including these, the Retro Rallycross. Awesome racing. To find out what's going on, let's join Simon.
Well, it's a new face to Retro Rallycross, but not a new face to the world of motorsport. It's Paul Swift, son of the legendary Russ Swift, a fabulous superstar stuntman in his own right, and the stunts are going to come thick and fast from all of these guys. You've got Barry Stewart in a very familiar Porsche, the ex-Rolf Nilsson car, and two very quick Minis at the back there. The one on the left, the green and white car of Lance Foster, a winner at Linden Hill at the start of the season. Who is going to get the best of the starts? The Porsche with its legendary traction gets a bit of wheel spin. Paul Swift does a great job from pole position, but there it goes. Barry Stewart around the outside, incredibly quick in a straight line, and fabulous traction, and a good driver, and it all works well for him to take the lead into the first part of the lap as they sweep through the very dusty circuit here at Croft. Of course, you can see just how hard Paul Swift is working, using all of his legendary car control. They then go across to the right-hand side to the infield section now, where, as you can see, the grip level changes massively. Of course, it's also incredibly bumpy. Swift in a fabulous Mark II Escort there, looking superbly controlled on the inside, but under big pressure from Ray Morgan, a man who won the first of the Retro Rallycross events last year. And all of these guys that are in amongst it usually provide some of the most popular entertainment. A lot of people harking back to when these cars were in their heyday. And that's what makes Retro Rallycross so popular. As I said, 1982 British Rallycross winner Rolf Nilsson drove that Porsche. It was a four-wheel drive car, back to a two-wheel drive configuration for Barry Stewart. But that Mini has been absolutely awesome in the hands of Lance Foster. Perhaps the race of the year so far was the opening round at Linden between Ray Morgan and Lance Foster. And it was spin to win for Foster. I wonder if he's going to be able to get the better of the Escort just ahead of him. Of course, very similar to the car that we saw John Welsh victorious in the British Rallycross Grand Prix when it used to be held down at Brands Hatch back in the 80s. Arguably one of the heydays for a lot of these cars, of course, from that generation. You can see just how tentative the drivers are having to be on this infield, but Stewart, after that magnificent start, not getting away, and of course Paul Swift doing his best to try and come through, get edged wide just at the end, drops to fourth. It is Stewart from Morgan, from Foster. Mark Griffin brings the Fiesta home. So the A final result by 1.07 seconds. It's Barry Stewart who wins the pre-82 category from Morgan Foster, Paul Swift in fourth, Mark Griffin, and poor Ian Biaggi didn't finish. So on to the post-1982 category, 82 to 87 to be precise. A very familiar face of Rob Gibson in his magnificent 6R4. Equally as impressive is the Delta Integrale of Grzegorz Kalinecki. New face, Ashley Davis, some racing, rallying and rallycross. So going to be interesting to see how he gets on in his 205. Some other familiar cars a little bit further back on the grid. As always, it's going to be spectacular, it's going to be quick, but is it going to be Gibson or Kalinecki who gets the best of the starts, punting up through the gears, 500 horsepower plus four-wheel drive. Look how quick these two cars are into the first corner. Gibson goes in, manages to get the power down very, very well, sweetens across to the right-hand side. Kalinecki staying in his wheel tracks very, very tightly so, and understandably keen to ensure that Gibson doesn't break away before they get onto the loose. Both these guys have been victorious in Retro Rallycross, and no doubt that this is the one that perhaps arguably will mean the most to either of these guys at the end. Kalinecki's car from 1987. He's had the car for some 19 years, based over in the Republic of Ireland. The Sport Chip is his team that looking after and preparing the car, and very effectively so as well. He's raced the European Rallycross with this in the past. Of course, Rob Gibson, well, the history of that car is that Rob's been involved with it for some time. You see the rest of the pack coming through. And at the back there, it's Tony Hurst, the Coronation Street actor, enjoying his time up here at Croft, doing a very solid job so far. Gibson, meanwhile, starting to focus on edging away, but tyre squealing in the background tells us that Kalinecki's had a moment, doing everything he can to try and close the gap to Rob Gibson. Let's have a look at the replay. Look, in the background through turn two, he throws the car in. The back end steps, so you can see all four wheels spinning frantically, and that's what allows him to recover from what would almost certainly have been a spin in a two-wheel drive car. Kalinecki knows that car so well. Problems there for Dave Black in his Astra, and even bigger problems for Tony Hurst. We just saw him in action. He's had a bit of a moment there and got stuck. Hopefully he'll be able to get going again. Meanwhile, Kalinecki tried to recover from that massive moment. Close down on Gibson, who is tentatively past the yellow flag area where Hurst has had his problem, but he's done enough. It is Rob Gibson who takes victory here at Croft, ahead of Grzegorz Kalinecki, with a great performance. Coming through in third place is going to be Ashley Davis. So there's our confirmation by 3.35 seconds. Gibson, Kalinecki, Davis, Paul Smith in fourth, and an on-finish for Black and Hurst.